by the defense and asked to examine some Facebook evidence.
And what kind of records did you review?
I was given access information to download the Facebook records for Brittany Haynes directly from Facebook.
And did you alter those records in any way?
No.
Did you alter any of the records to reach a specific conclusion?
No.
Upon reviewing these records, did you discover anything abnormal?
Well, the primary thing that I noticed was in looking at the security changes, there were some suspicious activities around altering the password and email and the phone number of the account, which kind of it gave me the impression that somebody else was using the account other than the owner.
What evidence specifically led you to that conclusion?
Well, in the Facebook files, there is a directory that has the title Security and Login Information,
Yes.
Administrative Records. These records document changes to the account, like the password changes and the email and phone number and changes.
Anything else?
Well, the records include information about the IP address and the identifying characteristics of the cell phones that were used or computers that were used in involving making the changes.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry. Finish.
Well, it seemed as if some key suspicious parts of the activity came from a different phone number than the routine use.
Okay. I'm going to talk about IP addresses for a moment. What is an IP address?
An IP address is an identifier that allows the internet to route traffic to and from a particular host so that it can communicate with other machines on the network.
How often?
Excuse me. I need to stop here. I forgot to mention. During the break, right after the lunch break, our alternate, Ms. Reed, had a family, a medical emergency, and had to go to meet that individual at the hospital. So I did excuse her in case any of you noticed we're only down to one alternate now. So I'm sorry for the interruption. I meant to do that before we started and got thinking about other things. May I continue? Sorry to interrupt you, sir.
Sure.
The question about what is an IP address?
Yes, an IP address is an identifier that is used to route traffic to and from nodes that are connected to the internet.
And do those IP addresses change?
Yes, they can change. The IPv4 address space was exhausted several years ago, and most carriers only allow use of an IP address either temporarily or typically shared these days, especially in cell phone networks.
Okay. How often do IP addresses change?
That is up to the individual carrier, but it is typically in terms of days.
How many IP addresses did you discover throughout the course of your investigation?
There were probably a dozen or more.
Did you make any determinations about how many were active, how many IP addresses were active between June 2020 and September 2020?
Yeah, I focused in on a handful of subnets that were common with the activity in the Facebook account.
So how many would you say were active during that time?
Like less than 10.
Is that significant or not significant?
Well, only that it allows us to, examine the traffic with Facebook and try to determine the differences between the sources.
Can you explain what a device identifier is?
A device identifier is a piece of information that's associated with like a cell phone or a device that uniquely identifies it to, for example, advertisers so that they can know who is browsing their website.
Did you make any conclusions about the device identifiers used between June and September of 2020?
Yes, the user agent identifiers included information about the make and model of the cell phones and the software that was involved.
Can you tell me what cookies are?
Cookies are an additional identifier, and they're frequently used for security access, so that once you log in, you're given a cookie, and that will continue to allow you to do activity on the website without giving your password for every single action.
Do cookies relate to device identifiers?
Only that they're usually, the combination of the two make the device unique.
Do cookies relate to IP addresses?
For given activity, again, the IP address can be combined with the other piece of information to make the access unique.
And do cookies change?
Yes, they can.
Do you know how often they change?
That depends on the website and the design of the website.
Do you know what two-factor authentication is?
Yes.
And what is two-factor authentication?
Two-factor authentication is a method of additional security to verify that the user is who they say they are. So an example would be that the user, in order to log in, would not only need a password, but also be able to respond to a text message to a cell phone, for example, or an email address.
Can you turn to page 3 of your report?
Yes,
You have a chart there.
I do.
Were you able to make any conclusions regarding two-factor verification as it relates to the information that you received from Ms. Haynes' Facebook account?
Well, there was a suspicious section in this security and login information that started with a password change and then removed the phone number and changed the email address. This is stereotypical of someone hacking into an account and then taking it over in a way where Facebook would no longer be reaching out to the original owner.
Anything else significant about your chart on page 3?
Well, after removing the phone number, there were 2 email changes, both of which start with the name Jacob, and really that's the primary clue as to who might be involved in this activity. But other than that, it's different activity from what appears to be the owner of the account from previous activity.
And what dates were those on?
The email changes occurred on 8/5.
And how many email addresses were used?
2, and strangely, they were changed like within a minute of each other from one email address to the other.
Why is that strange?
Well, I mean, usually it indicates that they changed it to one email address and then changed their mind quickly and changed it to another email address. Usually somebody knows what email address they want to provide to an account, and it's just odd that it was changed so quickly.
On that chart, I see some numbers next to the date.
Yes.
What are those numbers?
The IP addresses of the activity in question?
And when you were reviewing the information, is this Facebook Messenger information?
It is from Facebook, yes.
Do cell phones use IP addresses?
Yes.
And do computers use IP addresses?
Yes.
Did you reach any other conclusions as to your chart on page 3?
Well, the primary conclusion is that it appeared as if somebody else was using Brittany's Facebook account during a certain period of time here.
Page 4, there's another chart.
Yes.
And
It's actually a continuation of the previous chart.
this time, it appears that there's something in the right-hand column. What is the right-hand column?
The user agent identifier.
Are user agent identifiers always the same?
I'm sorry, could you repeat
Are
that?
user agent identifiers always the same?
Oh, well, they are always the same from the same device until the software on the device is updated.
Second. Can more than one person be active on a Facebook account at the same time?
Objection.
Sustain.
Did you draw any conclusions about activity from separate accounts?
Well, it would appear that somebody was logged into this Facebook account from multiple devices.
Did you make any conclusions about if during that time frame 2 people could be logged in simultaneously?
Objection.
Could have or were?
Could have.
Well, I'll sustain that.
Did you make any conclusions about multiple users related to this account?
Objection.
Did you say lawful users?
No. I said, did you make any...
What you said, any conclusion as to lawful users is what I thought you said.
Not lawful users, no.
All right, rephrase your question
Okay.
so I understand.
How many people during the course of your investigation do you believe were on this account?
Objection.
Okay, I'm going to sustain that.
What conclusions did you draw from your investigation?
Objection. This is so open-ended.
Sustained. Counsel approach.
Did you make any conclusions about Jacob Perkins and Brittany Haynes being logged on at the same time?
Objection.
Well, in that form, I would say yes. My understanding, he tracks devices, not people. So unless those devices are named Brittany and Jacob, which they're not because they're phones, so they're not people, that is not a proper question. So I sustain that objection.
Okay. Did you make any conclusions about multiple IP addresses being on the same account?
Yes, there appeared to be simultaneous connections from multiple devices in the account at the same time.
The chart on page 5. You go there. What is that an example of?
That is an example of some text messages that were sent through Facebook.
Are they indicative of anything?
Objection.
Yeah, I don't know what indicative means. This is supposed to be an expert testifying an expert opinion, so let's get to that. I'm sustaining that objection.
When you say that Jacob Perkins' email address was changed on 10/5 on 2 different occasions, can you say that with a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Objection. 10/5 has nothing to do with it.
That's beyond the scope of this indictment. The indictment ends on September the 9th, so that would be outside the parameters of the time in question, so I sustain that.
When you say that Jacob Perkins changed his email address 2 times on the date of August 5th, 2020, do you make that with a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
The only clue that I have that it was done by Jacob is the fact that the email address appears to be a Jacob email address. Other than that, I can only assume that the person that changed it was using their own email address.
Objection to what he assumes. That is not an expert conclusion.
Okay, I'm going to sustain that. The jury will disregard that statement. This is not this expert opinion is not an assumption. Evidence is not an assumption. So let's move on, Mr. Descentore.
Based on your chart on page 3, can you say with a reasonable degree of scientific certainty that 2-factor verification was changed?
Yes, the primary modes of 2-factor authentication were changed. The phone number and the email.
With a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, can you say that there were multiple IP addresses used
Yes.
during the time frame of June of 2020 through September 2020?
Yes.
With a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, can you say that there were multiple identifiers on the Facebook account?
Yes.
And can you say that for the period of June of 2020 through September of 2020?
Yes.
Did you reach a final conclusion on this case?
Objection.
Sustained.
No further questions.
Cross.
Mr. Markley, I'm Annika Collins. I'm the Highland County prosecutor.
Hello?
Hello. You were hired by the defense to prepare this report, correct?
Correct.
And at what rate were you hired?
My rate chart varies depending on the activities. It varies from $50 an hour to $400 an hour.
Okay. So at what rate were you hired to prepare the report?
The preparing of the report is usually $250 an hour.
Okay. And at what rate were you hired to test for your testimony in court today?
That normal fee for that is $1,600 for half a day.
Not normal. I'm asking you specifically, at what rate were you hired for your testimony today?
I believe that a discount was negotiated for a total of $2,400 that included half a day of testimony.
Yeah. So your charge for half a day testimony to the defense today was $1,600?
That's the normal fee, yes.
No, that's not what I asked. What was your charge to the defense for your testimony today?
The agreement with the defense did not break down the costs in that detail.
Okay. So then what was your total bill to the defense for the work you did for them?
The total, I believe, was $2,400.
Okay, and that was to review the report, review all this evidence, prepare a report, and come and testify today. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you recall sending an invoice to me for testimony?
Yes.
Do you recall how much that invoice was for?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You met Brittany Haynes prior to today?
No.
Now, when you downloaded this information from the defendant's account, is it true that you used her username and her password and then dumped it all?
I was given the username and password to access the account from the attorney, and I downloaded the information as Facebook provided it, unaltered.
Okay, so if you have my username and password, you can download my information?
Yes.
If I have your username and password, can I download your information?
No, because I'm not on Facebook.
Let's assume for a moment you were. If I had your username and password, could I download your information?
Yes, this is true of anybody.
Okay, of anybody, thank you. So it takes absolutely no expertise to do what you did.
The expertise had nothing to do with downloading the information. The expertise had to do with examining it and basically correlating the relevant information for the case.
All of which you got when you downloaded using her username and password.
I'm sorry, that I don't understand the question.
All of the information that you got, that you examined when you downloaded using her username and password.
The information did come from Facebook, yes.
Okay. As you went through the defendant's Facebook account, were you given specific names to look for?
I was not given any names to look for.
Are you sure? Let's look at
Oh,
page
wait.
2. Let's
There-
look at page 2 of your report, please.
There was some names I was given.
Who gave you those names?
The attorney sent me an email with the
The
names.
defense attorney?
Yes,
Okay, so your statements now, your testimony's changed, that you were given 4 names by the defense attorney. Is that correct?
yes.
Okay. Now, you were able to pinpoint how many times a device with a different IP address or different IP addresses logged in. Is that correct?
The question doesn't make sense.
Okay. Were you able to pinpoint times, the dates, different events where different IP addresses were used to log into her Facebook account?
That was not the focus, no.
So you are not able to say that different IP addresses were used to log into her Facebook account?
No, I didn't say that. What I said was the question didn't make sense the way you posed it.
Okay.
Because I was not examining login information. I was examining access information of
Okay, so were you able to determine that the account was accessed from different IP addresses?
yes.
Okay. And access does not mean logged into?
No, it doesn't, because
Okay, so
somebody
these aren't-
may have logged in weeks ago and they're accessing it currently. So the difference between access and a login event can be,
Weeks apart.
yeah, it could be.
Okay, so when you're talking about these mysterious, suspicious access, are the accesses or logins?
The suspicious activity had to do with modifying the owner's account information.
Okay, so would you call that an access or logging in and modifying?
They had to have access in order to do this.
Okay.
So the login had to occur prior to that.
Let's narrow this down. Isn't it true that you can't tell from any research that you did who logged in or who accessed this account? You cannot put a person's name, a real person to it.
No, I can't tell who's using the device. I can only tell you that it came from multiple devices, which, unless a person owns all those devices, it seems suspicious.
It does seem suspicious, but if a person does have more than one device, say 2 cell phones, 2 different IP addresses,
Yes,
okay, and if a person uses Wi-Fi somewhere, would that be, if you log in at the library, for example, different IP address?
yes,
If you use someone else's phone, if I borrowed my co-counsel's phone and accessed my account using his phone, different IP address?
typically yes,
But it would still be me.
yes.
So you have no idea who logged into her account or who accessed her account.
That's
Correct.
essentially true, yes.
Okay. You don't know if she did it using multiple devices.
Well, except that it would...
Answer my question. Do you know if she did it using multiple devices?
I don't.
Okay. If a person voluntarily gives their login information to someone else and that person accesses their account, would that be suspicious?
There would only be areas of suspicion if their activity involved changing user identifier information, or if they're sending, doing unusual activity with Facebook account that the owner wouldn't normally do. That would be suspicious.
Like maybe if I were having trouble putting my password in and I have to change things up.
Sure, but
Okay. So, again, you don't know what of these accesses were done by someone who had permission to use the information. Yes, no?
I would almost, I would agree that it is very likely that the person that did this had the access information.
Had the access information?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna it states exhibit yes.
Madam Mayor, I probably should retrieve a few exhibits.
Sure.
I'm going to hand you, I'm going to have my co-counsel hand you, as previously been marked as, let me see that. Previously been marked as States Exhibit 9 for identification purposes. I'm sorry. I'm going to hand you as previously been marked as States Exhibit 11 for identification purposes. And that's already been identified and admitted as some Facebook messages between the defendant and someone else. But can you flip to the last page of that?
Page 18.
Whatever the last page is. The last thing on there says something like created by Brittany Haynes. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, repeat the question?
The last thing on that, it says, at the very bottom, it says something like created by Brittany Haynes or something like that.
Yes.
Well, if that's from the Facebook information that you downloaded, why does it say that?
Because I logged into Brittany Haynes' account. Facebook assumed that I was Brittany Haynes, and when it generated the data, it labeled it by the name of the user that owned the data.
I have no further questions.
Redirect.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that last question about the created by Brittany Haynes?
Objection, Your Honor. Is that a question?
Ask a question. That's not, I mean, that is a question, but it's not really a redirect question.
On the last page that it says created by Brittany Haynes, of that exhibit that you have in your hand.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that?
Elaborate on what? I'm objecting.
That fact that it was created by Brittany Haynes.
Okay, redirect is limited to things were brought up on cross. So ask a question about something she asked on cross, not just elaborate. That just is like we could be here forever.
Do you find it important or not important that that exhibit was created by Brittany Haynes?
At the bottom of the record, it indicates that it was Brittany Haynes' account and that Facebook assumed Brittany Haynes was requesting this data. So it includes her name simply by default. The relevant part of that information would be the date and time that it was created, because that's a snapshot of the data at Facebook.
Why does Facebook assume that?
Objection. Cause for speculation.
Sustain.
What was the purpose of the defense retaining you?
Objection.
I believe those are the first three questions.
Yeah, that goes to what was asked on cross. You may answer.
How big was the record that you downloaded?
I believe it
Wait a minute,
was,
did you want him to answer that question? Did I say sustained? I meant overruled.
You said overruled.
Yeah. Yeah, you didn't have him. If you don't want him to answer the question, that's fine, but I did overrule the objection.
If you remember the question.
I don't know.
How big was the record that you extracted regarding Brittany Haynes' Facebook?
I believe that the total was about 5 gigabytes.
Why were you given names by the defense?
Objection.
Overruled.
I'm sorry, repeat the question.
Why were you given names by the defense?
To focus investigation or limit the investigation to areas of that large amount of data that were relevant.
The state had asked you about logging in somewhere else in different IP addresses. Do you remember that question?
Yes.
Okay. Can more than one person be logged into a Facebook account on one device?
Objection.
Overruled.
Yes.
And there was some discussion about access versus login. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. What is the difference between access and login?
Logging in identifies the user that wants to use the account. After the login has been authenticated, they are granted access for a period of time.
And how long does that time last?
That depends on the website, and even a particular website can change that from time to time. So there isn't a clear answer to that.
And what is access?
Access means that you have a security token that identifies you as having a right to request things with Facebook.
So can you be logged in on a device for longer than when you access it?
Yes.
So for example, if on August 5th, 2020, somebody accesses an account, can they be logged on for a longer period than just 8/5/2020?
Yes.
So if somebody has been logged in, could they continue to use the account to send messages?
Yes.
No further questions?
All right, you may step down. You're still under the separation order not to discuss your testimony with any other witnesses during the trial until it's completed. You can just leave the documents there on the table, please. Next witness.
Before you release them.
Pardon me? Okay.
What's that?
Pardon me? You need to leave that as your exhibit. all. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take about a 15-minute break here. And again, during the break, don't discuss the matter with anyone, permit anyone to discuss it in your presence, including among yourselves. Don't talk to any of the folks, any witnesses or persons that are involved in the case. Don't attempt to obtain any information, do any posting or research on the internet, social media, etc. Also, I didn't tell you earlier that during the deliberations, you're not permitted to have any electronic devices other than those provided by the court. And so you'll need to turn in your cell phones. And usually when we're using the jury room, we just put them back there on the windowsill. But we'll have the bailiff go around with a bag and collect them unless you want to leave them somewhere during the break. If you feel safe leaving them in your car or whatever, but you won't be able to have them in the courtroom. So 15 minutes. So I have 1:36, so we'll be back at 1:51. All right, your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Call Brittany Haynes.
Haynes, raise your right hand and be sworn, please. You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Have a seat right there. Take your mask down. And since she is the defendant, she may be photographed by the press if they wish to. All right, you may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Can you please state your name for the record?
Brittany Haynes,
Please spell your last name for me.
Haynes.
And live here in Highland County.
Yes,
Are you the mother of Lucy Haynes?
yes.
What was her date of birth?
6/4/20.
Are there any other children?
Yes. William Haynes,
And as far as William Haynes goes, what is his date of birth?
5/30/19.
Do you have any other children?
No.
Who all lives with you at your house between the period of June of 2020 and 9/9 of 2020?
William and Lucy and Jacob Perkins.
Now, did Jacob Perkins live there the entire time?
On and off.
You explain that.
He would stay some nights at his parents', but mainly stay at my place.
You're going to have to keep your voice up so we can hear you.
Sorry.
Is there any point in time where Mr. Perkins moved out of your house?
When he first got arrested
When was that?
in July.
And did he ever visit the house after that?
Yeah.
And do you know for what reason?
To watch the kids while I was at work.
How long did that last?
Almost a month.
You said to babysit the kids?
Yeah.
After he babysat the kids, was he in your home until September 9th, 2020?
Yeah. Sometimes he would stay at his parents'.
How often?
Every other night.
Did he come over to your house on September 8th, 2020?
Yes.
When was the last time prior to that he was at your house?
September 3rd
How do you remember that?
is the day the TPO was dropped.
And what do you mean by TPO?
The last time he got arrested, which was the second time, there was a TPO put into place to protect me and the kids.
Prior to September 3rd, 2020, when was the last time he was at the house?
August 28th.
How do you remember that?
That was the day I lost my job at Seal Tight.
You remember getting a few interviews in this case?
Yes.
Who was the first interview?
Antonor,
Where was that location?
at my house.
Do you remember what you told Detective Antimore that day?
I kept
At
telling
the
him,
house. I'll be specific.
yeah, I kept telling him that Jacob did this.
And did you talk to Detective Angle?
Yes.
And there's a car ride to the jail, is that correct?
Yes.
And in that car ride, there was an interview.
Yes.
And do you remember what you told Angle in that interview?
I told her that I did not do this.
Do you remember if there was another interview that night?
Yes.
And how long was that interview?
A couple hours.
Do you remember what time of night that interview was?
I remember getting to the station around 12:45.
How many officers were you questioned by?
2.
Who was the first officer questioning?
Ingalls.
And what did you tell Detective Angle?
I kept repeating that I did not do this and that Jacob did.
Do you remember talking to Detective Antonor
Yes.
that night at the jail?
Yes.
At the Sheriff's Department?
Yeah.
What did you tell Detective Antonor?
The first part of it I kept denying, and in the interview with Erica before that, she asked me questions about what happened, and then I repeated it back to her, and that happened with Antonor too, and they thought I was taking blame for what I was saying.
Well, we'll try to break up the interview, okay? You said that initially you denied any injuries to the children that you caused.
Yes.
And then something happened with Detective Antonor. Can you explain what happened?
It started by, he was just asking me questions about my cat and stuff like that. And then,
At some point, you heard Detective Antonor's testimony about the injury to the head of the child. Is that a yes?
yes.
How did the injury to the child's head occur?
Jacob was drunk at my house and he slammed Lucy's head off the wall.
Did you witness that?
Yes.
When was that?
Between August 6th and August 12th.
I believe that you told Detective Antonor a different story, though.
I feared for my life. That's why I told them something that they wanted to know.
What did you tell Detective Antonor?
That Lucy hit her head on a toy on the floor.
And why did you tell him that?
Because I feared for my life.
Why would you fear for your life?
Jacob threatened to kill me all the time.
You later changed your story with Detective Antonor about the injury to the leg. Is that correct?
Yeah.
What happened to the child's leg?
Jacob had pulled it one day, and I had said that I kneeled on it.
What's that?
I had said that I kneeled on it, but Jacob had actually pulled it a few days prior.
And what did you tell Detective Antonor?
About which part?
The leg.
That I had kneeled down on it when I was trying to get wipes off the shelf.
Why would you tell him that?
Because I feared my life.
Then there was an injury to the arm of Lucy Haynes. Do you remember talking about that? And do you know what happened to Lucy's arm?
I was at work that day.
And what happened?
Objection. She just said she wasn't there.
Sustained.
Do you know what day you were at work?
July 23rd.
How long did you work that day?
8 hours.
What, if anything, did you notice when you got home?
My daughter was acting weird, and Jacob was acting anxious on the bed.
What do you mean your daughter was acting weird?
She wouldn't move her arm.
Do you ever admit to Detective Antonor about breaking the ribs?
No, I told him that I had witnessed Jacob grabbing her and squeezing really tightly.
When was this?
The early part of July, I think.
So, Ms. Haynes, why didn't you seek medical attention for the head injury?
Because the day after that, Jacob had told me he took her to the doctor. So I believed him.
Did you later find out that the child was at the doctor?
I found out from the doctor herself that he didn't take her.
How about the injury to the leg? Why didn't you seek medical attention?
Because that time he had told me he took her to the doctor too.
How about to the arm?
Same thing with that one.
After these injuries occurred, did you notice anything different about your children?
Not really. They smiled and giggled all the time.
I think that's in evidence already, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll give it then, so you...
No, I mean, if it's in evidence, use the exhibit. We don't duplicate exhibits.
I am using mistakes to it, I just want from somebody.
It's right over here on the table. Exhibit 69, I believe.
Can I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
What is that exhibit that I just handed you?
It looks like a agreement about Lucy.
On the back of it, it has a number. Can you say what number it is?
Exhibit 69.
When was the first time you saw that?
Saw this
Yes.
when this case started.
Did you write that letter?
No.
Did you tell somebody what to put in that letter?
Me and him both agreed on what we were going to write out.
Wait a second. You both agreed about what you were going to write out?
We were supposed to go get it notarized.
Is that the agreement that you guys agreed
No.
upon?
It's completely different.
What agreement did you guys agree upon?
We had agreed that he would take her temporarily so I could get back on my feet.
Brittany, what do you mean by getting back on your feet?
I had money problems.
Any other problems?
No.
Why wasn't the agreement including William?
Because I wanted to keep William and him take Lucy temporarily.
Why did you want to keep William and give Jacob Perkins Lucy?
He always begged to have one of the kids. And he said his parents were watching him all the time, so they'd keep an eye on him.
Did you sign that document?
No.
There was obviously some talk about some bruising on the children. You saw the pictures of Lucy's face on September 9th of 2020.
Yes.
Right? Did you cause those bruises?
No.
Do you know who caused those bruises?
Jacob.
How do you know that?
I took pictures of my daughter before she left my house.
When did Jacob pick up the child?
September 8th.
There was bruising on Williams' face as well on September 9th, 2020. Do you know who caused those bruises?
Jacob.
And how do you know that?
I had went down to my mom's house for an hour to get some food that she was giving me. And when I came back home, he made an excuse saying that my son had fell off a lion toy with a Hot Wheel in his hand.
Objection to everything Jacob said.
Sustain.
What day were you referring to?
I think it was July 24th. I can't remember exactly.
Do you remember leaving the house that day?
Yeah.
Do you remember if the child had any bruises on him?
No.
And then you came home at some point.
Yeah. Came home an hour later and there was a bruise on his face.
Also some bruising on Williams' back, too, as well. You see those pictures?
Yes.
When did you first notice the bruising on Williams' back?
The day I picked up my kids.
Well, you gotta be a little bit more specific.
August
What day?
26th.
So let's try to clarify that question. Where were you on August 25th that you were coming back to?
I was in North Carolina.
And when did you leave for North Carolina?
The 16th of August.
So on who did you leave the children with at that time?
Sydney Kress.
And were you in contact with Ms. Kress during that time?
Yes.
Were you aware if anybody else was watching the children at that time?
Not until about 2 days later.
And then who was watching the children with Sydney?
Zaya Cloud had taken Lucy, and they kept switching back and forth.
When you left for North Carolina on August 16th of 2020, were there bruises on Williams' back?
No, not that I noticed.
Anything else that you noticed when you picked up the children on August 26th of 2020?
I noticed that there was a knot on my son's head and bruises on his back.
How about Lucy? Anything around Lucy?
I think I seen one bruise on her back.
What, if anything, did you notice about her head?
There was nothing wrong with it. Looked normal, besides the spot of hair missing.
Was it missing before you left for North Carolina on August 16th of 2020?
No.
Who did you actually pick the children from when you returned back from North Carolina?
Shauna,
How was the exchange made?
I had broke down in North Carolina. My mom had to come get me. And I had to wait till the next day to get her old car in my name.
Who did you pick up the children from?
Shauna.
And who's that?
That's Zaya and Sydney's mom.
Did she take the child to your house, or did you go to her house to pick up the children?
I went to her house because it was a few miles up the road.
Shortly after that, you employed a Taylor Fowler babysit. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Were you supposed to pay Taylor any kind of money?
Yeah, I told her I couldn't pay her at the time, and I talked to her on the phone and told her that.
Did you then go to her house on December 20th of 2020?
No.
Did you ever try to pay her back?
No.
Were you supposed to pay your sisters?
Yeah, I'm still trying to work on paying my sisters back.
How much did you owe your sisters?
I think it was $200. They were going to split it.
And to this day, you haven't paid them.
No.
Now, you heard the testimony from Sydney Crest. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you think of any reason she would make up any story like that?
I have no
Objection
idea.
calls for speculation.
Sustained.
What is your relationship to Sydney Crest?
That's my half-sister's sister.
What kind of relationship do you have with her?
Isaiah or Sydney?
You're going to have to speak up
With
and
Zaya or
lean
Sydney?
closer to the microphone so we can get you, especially when we have outside sound.
What kind of relationship do you have with Sydney?
We're friends. We talked for a long time.
You had never brought the children to see Sydney prior to this?
No.
That includes William?
Yeah,
And how old is William?
almost 2.
There was some testimony about exchanging passwords when Jacob was on the stand. Do you remember that testimony?
Yes.
Did you exchange your password with him?
When we were together, when we broke up, I changed my password back.
Was he allowed to have access to your account after you broke up?
No, but I kept getting logged out.
Were you able to log back on at some point?
It took forever to get back in.
Was Jacob upset that you were dating another man at that time?
Objection.
Sustained.
Did you notice Jacob's demeanor change towards you after you started dating another person?
Objection.
Overruled.
Yes.
And what was that change?
He became more violent.
Objection.
Well, I'll sustain that. That's not a...
What was his mood like?
He was grumpy all the time.
So if this individual, Jacob Perkins, is like this, why do you keep going back to him?
I have no idea. Probably because of my kids.
How old are you?
18.
How old were you when you had William?
16.
And how old were you when you had Lucy?
17.
If Jacob threatened to kill you like you said he did,
Every time I try to get my phone broken.
Brittany, did you break any of Lucy's ribs?
No,
Did you cause any of the injuries to Lucy Haynes?
no,
Did you ever harm your children?
no.
There was also some testimony about the children's weight. Do you remember hearing that today? And yesterday? Were the children underweight?
Just by a few pounds. They have high metabolism like me.
Objection.
Well, I couldn't actually hear you, but I'm going to sustain the objection and because I didn't hear it. So if you want to ask the question, what was the question?
The question was about the children's weight and if they were underweight.
Okay, she's already answered that question. So let's move on.
Did you accompany the children to any of the doctor's appointments?
As many as I could. I worked a lot.
So how many doctor's appointments did you attend regarding Willow Haynes?
I tried to get to all of them.
Can you estimate how many?
About 6 or 7, I think there was.
How many total visits were there?
I can't remember.
Now, Lucy Haynes had an appointment on June 11th, 2020. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And where was that appointment at?
I think out at the lake at Pam Nisley's office.
Were you the person who took that child there that day?
I can't remember.
And then the child was also seen by Ms. Nisley on the 23rd. Do you remember that? Did you take
Yes.
the child that day?
Jacob did.
And on August 6th of 2020, did you take the child that day?
Jacob did.
Were you informed that the children were underweight by the doctors?
I didn't hear him, but Jacob never even let me know that they needed to go to the doctor for a weight check.
Did you at any point get concerned about the children's weight?
Yeah, right before I got arrested and Jacob had left good for good.
What concerned you about the children's weight?
My son, I noticed he started sleeping a little bit more and he was eating really fast and then he'd puke. Lucy was the same way.
What period of time are you working from June of 2020 through September 9th of 2020?
I worked 2 different jobs, but it was Monday through Saturday, 6 to 4 sometimes, depending on if I wanted to work overtime.
When you say 6, is it 6 a.m.?
Yeah.
And was Jacob always the babysitter during that time?
Yeah, until the end when Taylor babysat him for a few days.
You heard some testimony about William's testicle.
Yeah.
Do you know what happened there?
Jacob had punched him in the groin when he was trying to change him, and he wanted to try and roll over.
Did you witness this?
Yes.
And when was this?
May 28th. May 28th of 2020.
Why didn't you seek medical attention?
because it didn't start showing up until about a month later. And that's when I took him to the doctor about it.
You saw the conditions of your home.
Yes.
Was that your home?
Yeah.
Is it accurate how it was portrayed that day, September 9th, or was accurate pictures?
No.
Okay. What, if anything, was different about them?
There was stuff thrown in my son's pack and play.
Who was all with you in that home on September 9th, 2020, when the detectives came out to see you?
My mom and dad left right before. They were talking to me out on my porch about, like, how they were going to help me get a car so that I could go to work back and forth. And then it was just me and my son. We were in the bedroom that night.
You did have bugs in the house.
Yeah, roaches. It was like a double wide house built into apartments, so bugs kind of traveled through the walls.
You did have dirty sheets in the crib.
I had bought stuff from somebody on Facebook, and there was stained sheets in there, so I didn't have any money that I could go buy new, so.
And you did have dirty sheets on your bed. Is that correct?
I didn't have sheets on my bed.
Was your bed stained?
Yeah.
Did you ever believe that your children were in danger when they were living with you as it relates to your house?
Well, as soon as Jacob left, I felt safe again.
How about the structure of the house?
Pretty sturdy. Besides the porch, it was kind of off.
Were there any broken windows in the house?
No.
Any electrical outlets that were open?
No.
Were there doors?
Yeah.
You also heard testimony about the children's progress, notably William. The fact that he was delayed in walking. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
What was his capabilities at the time of September 9th, 2020, as it relates to walking?
He could color guys, I don't know how to say it, but he could take colors of toys and put it into a basket that it belongs with. He even would say those colors. He would walk. He said a pretty decent amount of words.
Okay, that's about his speech. How about his mobility?
He was moving around all the time.
Was he walking?
Yeah. He would hold on to stuff to walk.
He wasn't able to walk by himself then?
He took a few steps by himself. I would stand a few feet away from where he was holding on to, and he would walk to me by himself.
Did you believe he was delayed in his mobility?
No. I just believe that he was just not coming up as fast as other kids did. I mean, children learn things different.
You have no previous children?
No.
Did you notice any delays in Lucy?
No.
So going back to the interviews, blame other people as well. Is that true?
There was certain times that the bruises had showed up after Jacob had been at my house, and I'd take my kids to that person's house, and I would notice it after I picked them up.
Did you list anybody else as a possibility of injuring these children?
I only named off 3 people.
Did you ever see those individuals injure the child?
No. I questioned Zay and Sydney about it, and they told me that they didn't.
Why would you tell the sheriff that?
I was exhausted. I haven't slept for 3 days prior to that, and I was really sick.
Okay, so the interview was on September 9th, and you're saying that you didn't sleep 3 days prior to September 9th?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I had COVID.
When did you get COVID?
When I went to North Carolina,
Did you
and a
find
little
out?
bit before that, it got worse.
When did you find that out?
I just kind of figured with all the symptoms I was having.
Did you ever get tested?
No.
You had COVID-like symptoms.
Yeah.
What were those symptoms?
I had a really high fever. It was over 105. I lost my taste, my sense of smell.
On the 105 temperature, what day did you have 105 temperature?
The day they came to my house.
You had what else?
I lost my taste, my sense of smell. It was hard for me to move. My body ached. I couldn't eat anything.
When Detective Antonor came back into the interview, or when Detective Antonor was on his way leaving the interview room, you stopped him. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Why would you stop him?
I can't remember what I asked him. I think I asked him about my cat.
Okay. Well, this actually occurred a few times during the course of the interview that he leaves. Do you remember specifically any time that he left on why you stopped him from leaving other than that time?
I think he stopped and asked me if I wanted a bottle of water or something.
Now, you heard the testimony that all you cared about was going to jail that day. Is that what you believe?
What I what?
Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, I was worried about going to jail. I mean, I love my kids with all my heart, so I didn't want to lose them to something I didn't do.
Why were you worried about your cell phone?
Because, I mean, that's the way I contacted Jacob to get a hold of him for my daughter, and it was hard to wrap my head around the fact that they got taken.
Were you getting updates from the police about the condition of your child during this interview?
Not really. They just told me that she was okay.
Did they tell you the injuries that the children had suffered?
Yeah.
What was your response to that?
I didn't really even know how to respond to that.
Why didn't you know how to respond to that?
I was in shock. I didn't even know my daughter had broken bones.
Did you ever see the children in a way that it appeared to you that they had broken bones?
No, they were completely fine.
How would they act? How would Lucy act on a daily basis?
She rolled over all the time by herself. She would lift her head up and look at me and smile.
Was she agitated at all?
No.
Probably.
He would only get mad when he would throw all of his toys out of the crib.
Do you love your children?
Yeah.
Did you ever harm them?
No.
No further questions.
Cross.
Madam, may I approach to retrieve a few exhibits?
Sure.
Good afternoon, Ms. Haynes. I'm Annika Collins. I'm the Highland County prosecutor. Now, Ms. Haynes, I want to talk first about the trip to North Carolina. Can we start there?
Yeah.
Okay. And am I to understand that you went to North Carolina? Was there a funeral?
Yeah.
There was a funeral?
Yeah.
Who died?
A friend of mine.
And his or her name was,
Her. Angie.
what was the last name?
It was an old friend from years ago. I couldn't remember her last name.
Okay, so you drove clear to North Carolina for the funeral of somebody whose name you didn't remember. Or you
I
didn't- you
remember
don't
her
know?
first name, not her last name.
Okay. Is C.J. Murphy living in North Carolina?
Yeah, that was my ex-boyfriend.
Did you go to North Carolina to be with C.J.?
No.
Ms. Haynes, I'm going to tell you this one time. You understand I have access to all of your Facebook messages.
I went there down
Do
there
you
for him too.
Let me answer my question first. Do you understand I have access to all of your Facebook messages?
Yes.
Now, I'm going to ask again. Did you go to North Carolina for your funeral?
Yes, and to see him. Because that was his friend too.
You went to North Carolina to see C.J.
It was both of our friends, so yeah.
Okay. You left back from North Carolina, you said, on what day?
The 24th,
Now, today you testified you left on the 16th, but that's not accurate, is it?
I left here in Ohio to go to North Carolina on the 16th.
On the 16th?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Are you sure it wasn't the 19th?
I don't know at this point. You're confusing the fuck out of me.
Excuse me?
You're confusing me, miss.
What did you say, though? Well,
I'm getting confused at what you're asking. Can you repeat
okay.
it?
Fair enough. You testified when your attorney was questioning you that you left on August the 16th. Do you recall that?
Yeah.
Isn't it true that you left on August the 19th?
I can't remember.
Okay. And you got back on what day?
The 24th.
The 24th of August.
Yeah.
Are you sure it wasn't the 25th?
It was the 24th.
So where did you go? What time did you get back?
At 3:45.
In the afternoon?
Yeah.
Okay, why didn't you go get your kids right then?
Because I had to wait to go get my mom's old car into my name.
Didn't have a vehicle to drive.
No.
Ms. Haynes, you understand I have access to all of your Facebook messages.
Yeah, I didn't have a car
Do
at that
you
time.
want to change your testimony right now? Why didn't you have a vehicle to drive?
Because my van broke down in North Carolina.
You had no way to go pick up your children.
No.
Who's AJ Conley?
That's a friend of mine.
Okay. Where does AJ live?
I can't remember.
You don't remember?
No.
Jamestown?
He lives up here in Hillsboro.
I
AJ
couldn't hear you.
Conley.
Near where?
He lives up here in Hillsboro, last time I
does?
checked. Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah, that's my neighbor.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Right.
In your testimony before I approached, you got back on August 24th, you didn't have a vehicle, and that's why you couldn't go get the kids.
Yeah.
It's your absolute sworn testimony.
Yeah, I'm not going to drive a vehicle illegally.
Okay. I'm going to hand you what I need tomorrow. Estates Exhibit 112 or 13.
13.
Here we are.
112 was the last one.
13 for identification purposes, and I clicked it to August 24th.
I see that.
It's from you. It's Facebook messages. You see what I'm talking about there?
Yeah, but I didn't go down there.
Well,
I didn't have a vehicle.
are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Let's read through there. Why don't you just start where the bottom of that page? What day are you on?
August 24th,
What time?
10:39
At night?
p.m.
Okay, and what did you say?
You want me to start at the exact bottom where he
Yep.
said leave the light on or something?
Okay, and what did you say?
Yeah, and I don't know what that means.
I can't understand. You're going to speak up, please.
It says yeah.
And then read up. Tell us when it's you and when it's him.
AJ, the classic, LOL. And I sent smiley faces. He messaged, I've done that shit before. And then he said, hey, do you think you'll be on your way before midnight? And apparently I put, I'm on my way right now. And he said, oh, okay, sweet. Just look up Jamestown, Jamestown, Ohio. I put okay, and he said, I'll meet you over there, I guess. I didn't say. I live at an apartment complex, that's why I said I can't be seen. Laughed my ass off. People will tell my mom.
Next page. Keep going. No, flip the opposite way.
He put snitches.
Speak up into the microphone, please.
Sorry. He put snitches and then said, if you want, text me when you're like 10 minutes away from Jamestown and I'll walk over there and wait for you.
And then?
I put okay. And he said, hey, did you happen to get my cigarettes by chance? LOL.
And you said?
Yeah.
And then?
I'm 10 minutes away.
And then?
Okay, I'll walk over there.
And then?
Your Honor, we don't object.
Pardon me?
We don't object.
Okay. On what basis?
Evidence speaks for itself. If there's a question, the prosecutor could ask the question instead of just reading the document.
Overruled. You may continue.
There's just a no.
There's what?
It says O and an L.
Okay, next page.
How much of this do you want me to read? All of it?
I'll tell you when I'm done.
He said, I'm up here. There's 2 cops sitting up here. Kind of weird. LOL. I said, okay. He said, you do know the laundromat, right? I told him, I think. And then he said, okay, LOL. It's behind a bank and close to Subway.
Keep going.
I said, hey, I made it home at 4. He said,
4 in the
okay,
morning?
good. It says right here, that was written at 7:49 a.m.
Okay, let's back up one message. When the message where you're there, right before you're talking about the subway, the laundromat, those things, what time are those messages?
12:30 a.m.
Okay, and then your next message is at 7-something in the morning? Is that correct? And your message is, I made it home at 4 in the morning, correct?
Yeah, but I didn't even go anywhere that night.
Ms. Haynes, you honestly expect us to believe that all this back and forth about where to meet and did you bring my cigarettes and what time are you going to get here, that's just made up? You two are pretending?
I don't smoke.
No. He asked you if you got cigarettes.
Why
You
would
sure
I waste?
You don't smoke?
Why would I waste my money on cigarettes for someone else?
Ms. Haynes, isn't it true that you got back from North Carolina, you borrowed your mom's vehicle, and you drove to Jamestown?
I don't drive illegally.
Isn't it true that's what you did?
No.
So everything in that Facebook message from you and AJ Conley is made up.
Well, I didn't text it to him.
You didn't? That's not you?
No, that's not me. I know my text.
Okay. That's not from your Facebook account?
It could have been from my account, but I had other people on my account at that same time.
What day was that?
August 25th?
Well, it starts on August 24th, correct?
Yeah.
So if somebody had logged into your account on that day, that would be in your report? Your expert report?
I don't know, is it? I don't
No.
know.
Let's move on. Actually, I'm going to approach and take that back from you just for a moment. Okay, I flipped to earlier in the evening. I'm going to direct you to the middle of the page. August 24th, about 9:08 in the evening. See that in the middle of the page? What's that say?
It said, just got my mom's old car, LOL.
And that says Brittany Haynes.
Yeah.
You can put that up. Now, you testified on direct examination that you, first I think you said you'd never seen that custody agreement until today.
Till this case first had started.
Okay. So was there another custody agreement signed that night?
No, we were supposed to write it down, but we never did.
Okay, so you didn't sign anything that night?
No, that's not my signature on there.
Okay. Everybody just have it. Can I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
I see the
State's Exhibit 7. I'm going to hand you as previously been identified and admitted into evidence, State's Exhibit 7, the messages between you and Jacob. And I'm going to refer you to the message on September 9th at 4:13 p.m. right here.
That one?
Here. That's the message you sent, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, what's it say?
It says if I do call, it's going to be your responsibility now because I don't have custody of her anymore. Why do you think that paper you signed yesterday did?
Okay. You can put that up. I'm going to next hand you what's previously been identified and admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit 108. Do you recognize that?
No.
You don't recognize that? Jacob identified that as Facebook messages between you and he.
I didn't. This is not to Jacob. This is to my mom.
It's a screenshot, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
You screenshot something and then you send it in a new message. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. At the bottom of the screenshot, you say, Jacob didn't hurt William's son. Correct?
I never call him Jake, though.
Now, you usually call him JP, or before JH. Is that correct?
Yeah.
JH. You couldn't have a last name, correct?
He had his own last name.
Now, you testified that on July 23rd you were at work.
Yeah.
Where were you working?
Candlelight?
Candlelight. You worked there through a temp agency, is that correct?
Yeah, TRN.
Okay. Gonna hand you some records from Candlelight. Do you recognize this?
This part right here?
The whole thing.
No, I've never seen this.
You've never seen that before? You
No.
weren't shown that by your attorney?
No.
Okay. Well, let me explain this. Some work records for you from TRN. It's a temporary place, correct?
Yeah.
And what day did you start? Applicant general applied from web.
7/27, but I applied before that too.
So that would be after July 23rd. Correct?
I applied to that before then. I had to redo it.
And you testified that you worked 8 hours every day.
Yeah.
And that's your sworn testimony.
Yeah, I worked 8 hours all day.
Okay. So if your records say that you left early on July 31st and earned a point, then your earlier testimony would not be true.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if your employment records say that on July the 31st you left early so you earned a point for leaving early, then your earlier testimony that you worked 8 hours a day every day is not true.
There was sometimes that I had an emergency at home because of Jacob.
Well, that's not what this says. It says you didn't feel good. And again, I want to remind you, I have your Facebook messages. So you left because you didn't feel good.
No, I said that so they didn't know what was going on at home.
Okay.
'Cause
So
I
if your
was-
Facebook messages indicate that you tell your mom you don't feel good and you need a ride, somebody better come get me right now, then what you just said wouldn't be true.
Oh, that's the day I got the crap beat out of me.
Okay. Did you go to work on August the 3rd?
I can't remember all these dates that you're saying.
Okay. Well, is it safe to assume, without spending all the time going through all these records, that you didn't work 8 hours every day?
I did.
You did.
Sometimes my kids were sick and I had to stay home for them.
Sometimes your kids were sick.
Yeah.
You didn't leave work because you were sick every single day. Isn't it true that you said you passed out in the line on Candlelight and wouldn't let you come back until you had a doctor's note?
Yeah, and I came back.
You did? You went to the doctor and got a doctor's note and went back to
I
Candlelight?
didn't get a doctor's note. I just asked them if I could come back and they said yes.
When was that?
Can't give you an exact date. I don't remember.
Was it in August? Or was it in October?
October when I got out.
Okay.
You got my work records from Seal Tight?
I do. Actually, we're going to get to those next. How long did you work at Seal Tight?
A month
A month. When?
in August.
You worked there a full month?
From what I remember, yes.
So, if your Seal Tight records say that you worked 4 days, you're saying that's not true?
I didn't work 4 days.
Okay. You worked there a month, and you also worked at Candlelight, correct?
I switched jobs.
So you worked at both of them in August together, like for a full month?
Worked back and forth.
Okay. You testified that you didn't know you were supposed to take the kids for weight checks. Is that correct?
Yeah, Jacob didn't let me know.
Well, didn't you take William to the doctor's appointment on February 13th?
I can't remember the exact dates.
Do you recall taking William to the doctor in February?
Me and Jacob usually went to them together.
Really? Was it you and your mom?
She took us to that appointment.
She did. And do you recall the doctor's office contacting you and reminding you he needed to come back for weight checks?
I went to a different doctor up here in town.
Who'd you go to?
It's the one behind Walgreens. I can't remember what it's called, but I think it's where Dr. Zile is.
Now, you said that the kids became covered in bites or at Sydney and Zaya's house, correct?
Yes.
No chance they were covered in bites from your house.
I have mosquitoes where I live.
I'll show you another message. We have number 114. First, who's Cindy Haynes?
My mom.
You guys message each other a lot on Facebook?
We used to.
Not so much anymore?
I text her through my number.
Okay. I'm going to hand you what's previously been marked as State's Exhibit 114 for identification purposes. Do you recognize that?
Yeah.
What is that?
Text messages.
Between you and Cindy Haynes?
Yeah.
Read about halfway down that page, and what do you tell her that William is covered in?
He's got BB bites all over, but that day
Is that bed bug, BB, bed bug?
I have an explanation for that.
Is that on August 18th?
Yes.
Thank you. And we established that you went to North Carolina August 19th, correct? You have to answer, I'm sorry.
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. Recall telling Cindy, your mother, before you went to North Carolina, that you needed to go to North Carolina because you needed to decide what to do with your kids.
I don't remember saying that.
I marked this one. When did you quit smoking?
Huh?
When did you quit smoking?
I quit smoking after Jacob left me.
When was that?
More or less, I stopped back in 2018.
I'm sorry?
2018, I stopped.
You stopped smoking in 2018? Okay.
Jacob got me doing it.
I'm going to hand you what's now been marked as State's Exhibit 115 for identification purposes. Do you recognize that?
Yeah.
Messages between you and Cindy Haynes, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And the date of these messages, August 17th, 2020, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to direct you to... Actually, I'm just going to have you start at the bottom of the second page because they are in order bottom to top in time they were sent.
You want me to read it all?
I do.
Make an objection, Your Honor.
Rule.
Either way, I'm going to do what I want.
Hold on, I'm going to stop you before we even get started.
Yeah.
Who, you need to tell us who is who.
That's me.
Okay.
I feel I need to gather my thoughts and figure out WTF I'm going to do. And I can't do that being held down by 2 kids and other shit. The kids are going to have to wait until I make my final decision if I'm keeping them or not.
Keep going.
My mom, I'm going to also live my life too. I'm not going to watch them for a week straight. Also, I'm only babysitting them until the end of August to find a sitter. And I said, no fucking babysitter would be willing to watch them for an effing week. I'm gonna put, it's not my responsibility. You chose to start a family too fast, and no one listens to me. I put, I didn't effing choose to do it. I don't want to effing kids. That's why I want to put them up for adoption. I put, you act like I chose to have kids so young, and I've held back my feelings about not wanting the kids for so long now. Put, they are legally your responsibility now. She put, I've got enough responsibility. I put, yeah, and I don't want to be their parent anymore, and I've already been forced to not live with my damn life, and I'm not going to be forced to keep my kids I don't want. She put, if you don't want them, give them to Jacob or adopt them out. She put, I'm not forcing you, but the law will force you to take care of them until you choose to adopt. They put, I'm not giving them to a effing drug addict and violent person. She said, then adopt them out, call an agency. I put, I will when I'm done dealing with this stupid court shit.
Anything else on the top of that page?
Just one thing. I'm freaking hungry and I need a damn cig because I'm about 5 seconds from snapping on everything and everyone.
Who's that?
Meaning I was sick of my case.
I'm sorry?
That was me. I was meaning I'm sick of my case. Like, at that point, the domestic violence, everybody blamed me for that.
Okay. How many times did you leave the kids home alone so that you could go out?
I never left my kids home alone.
No?
They were always
Sure.
with Jacob.
I'm sorry?
They were always with Jacob. I never once left my kids home alone.
It was from you guys. I didn't know she I'm going to hand you as previously done marked as State's Exhibit 116 for identification purposes. The Facebook message between you and your mom again?
Yes.
Okay, let me see this, please. Save some time and get right to it. I'm going to flip to the back page. And we're talking about September 7th, 2020. Can you read this line right here? First, tell us who sent it.
I sent it and it said I need to go now or I'm leaving the kids home alone.
What time is that?
7:42
At night or in the morning?
p.m.
Okay, so at night. Let's flip it to the front page. You guys texted back and forth. And This is before that time, September 2nd, 7:34 p.m. Do you see that?
Yeah,
And who's speaking there?
me.
And what do you say?
Then they will be left home alone because I'm not taking a marked as a little kid into a effing doctor's office with me so I can get CPS out here. And are you going to give me gas money so I can get there?
Put that up there. Now you are testifying today that you're terrified of Jacob. You feared for your life. You got to speak.
Yes.
But isn't it true that the period from July 27th through August the 12th, that you repeatedly begged him to come back home?
No, I didn't beg him to come back home.
Ms. Haynes, again, I want to remind you that I have your Facebook messages.
Yes, I know that.
Do you recall, isn't it true that you told him you would have sex with him if he would come back over, and it was every night?
We talked on the phone prior to that, and that's what he wanted.
Isn't it true that you told him that you would have sex with him if he came back over?
I don't remember.
Isn't it true that you offered him money to come back? $30, $20, $10?
I didn't have money at that time, so why would I
Isn't it
offer?
true that you offered him money to come back and stay with you?
I guess. I don't remember.
Okay. Isn't it true that there was a TPO in place until September the 3rd?
Yes, but he still came
Why
over.
did you, let me ask you a question. If you were so terrified of this person, why would you have the TPO brought?
It was just for him to see his kids, and that was it.
Okay. Now, your testimony was that Jacob was at your home on September the 3rd.
Yes.
Anybody else there that day?
I don't remember.
What about Kyle Whitley? Who's that?
That's my ex-boyfriend.
Dated him as well?
Yeah, after I got out of jail last time.
Okay. So, would he have been at the house maybe on September the 3rd?
He came by and dropped me off dinner.
Do you recall asking him to come to your home?
I don't recall.
If you looked at the messages, would it refresh your recollection?
Most
Would it
likely.
make you remember?
Possibly.
Okay. Okay, September 3rd at 9 o'clock. You tell him that you're free that night?
Yeah.
While you're holding on to that, actually, let me take a look at that real quick. While you have States Exhibit 116, I'm going to go to the front. Let me make sure we're on the right page. Yeah. Now, you testified earlier that September 7th, you had a temperature of 105. You had COVID. You couldn't do anything. You thought you had COVID. You didn't know the diagnosis, but you thought you had COVID. You had you couldn't walk. You were tired. All that. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Let's take a look at that message. On the front page there, what day are you on?
September 7th.
Okay, start at the bottom.
Do I really have to read this?
Yes, you do.
You gonna be naked when you get there, said Kyle.
I'm sorry, who is that?
I just said Kyle.
Okay. Go ahead.
Speak up louder, please.
Sorry. I put sure. He said, okay, I'm getting dressed and leaving now. See you in 2 minutes. I put okay. He said, I'm here. I told him the door's unlocked. He said, okay. And then he said, I'm home, babe.
What time was that message?
9:14.
So you with a 105-degree temperature, what'd you guys do?
We took a shower.
So
From
he
what I
came
remember.
over, asked you to be naked. He came over and you guys took a shower.
I took a shower. He said it'd help.
Are you sure?
That's what I remember.
Okay. Flip to the page before. Start about 8:30 in the evening. What are the two of you discussing?
Did you say 8:30?
Yes.
Is there an exact one? I don't see 8:30 on here. There's 8:32 and 8:33.
Let's start down here at 8:32.
He said, are the kids asleep? I said, yeah. He said, do you want me to come over there and see if some good sex helps?
Objection, Your Honor, to approach.
All right.
I apologize, Judge. I'm just looking for one day for one more question. Do you recall a conversation with your mom on September the 3rd?
I don't recall. I was sick that day.
You were sick that day?
Yeah.
So, how long were you sick?
Approximately 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Your Honor, may we approach?
All right.
So, do you recall telling your mom on September 3rd that you wanted to get rid of their asses talking about the kids?
I don't recall saying that.
You don't? So are you saying you didn't say it?
I'm not saying that. I don't remember sending that.
Okay. Your testimony today is that Jacob did all of this harm to these children, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if Jacob did all the harm to these kids, why would he need an explanation from you about what the babysitter did?
That's how he is.
Oh.
I know him better than anybody.
So your explanation for the lengthy text messages between the two of you about what the babysitter did and your attorneys and all of that stuff, that is just Jacob making stuff up?
I didn't have attorneys at the time. He's the only one who had an attorney.
You recall telling him that?
I don't recall that.
You don't recall that? You don't recall telling Jacob you had attorneys that were already looking into the babysitter and telling Detective Antinor you had just made that up to sound like a big shot?
I don't remember saying that.
Okay. You want this jury to believe you today that Jacob caused all these injuries, correct?
I know he did,
No, that's not what I asked.
but yes.
Okay. You've also blamed Taylor for this, correct?
Yes.
And you blamed Sydney and Zaya for this, correct?
Yes, but I questioned
And
him.
you also blamed William for this, didn't you?
I don't remember blaming William.
You don't remember telling the detectives that Jacob taught William how to throw toys and he threw a toy at Lucy and did this?
I don't remember saying that.
Okay. So you've blamed five people before today, but today you want the jury to believe that it was Jacob. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. You testified that you went back to Jacob because of your kids.
Yes.
Okay. But now you're claiming that he's the one hurting the kids. So why would you go back to him because of the kids if he's the one hurting the kids?
He threatened me all them years.
Okay. Do you recall telling Detective Antinor that you signed that custody agreement and that Jacob deserved to have Lucy?
I didn't remember saying that.
Where are the pictures that you took on September 8th of Lucy before you gave her to Jacob?
It's in the phone you guys have in evidence.
Talked about Jacob squeezing Lucy's ribs today,
Yes.
and that's how they got broke. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you recall telling Detective Antinor when you read that in the search warrant that isn't even true? That didn't happen?
What I told him is false. I know
So
it
when
happened.
you told Detective Antinor that story wasn't the story about the squeezing of the ribs, you lied to him.
From what I remember, I was in the kitchen cooking.
Yes or no? When you told Detective Antinor that the story in the search warrant about the squeezing of the ribs, when you told Detective Antinor that was not true, was that the truth or a lie?
You're confusing me.
Okay. Do you recall an interview with Detective Antinor
Yes.
at the sheriff's office?
Yes.
Do you recall looking at the search warrant with Detective Antinor?
Yeah.
Do you recall a section of the search warrant that said Jacob advised Lucy's ribs may have been broke from him squeezing her when Brittany Haynes pushed him?
I said it was a lie because...
Listen to me. Do you recall that? I don't want you to get confused.
Yes, I remember it now.
Okay. Do you recall telling Detective Antinor that wasn't true? It never happened. He didn't squeeze her and do that.
Not with his arms. I was cooking food.
Do you recall telling Detective Antinor that story in the search warrant was not true? Jacob didn't do that.
Yeah, I remember.
You remember telling Detective Antinor that?
I guess. I don't remember.
Okay. So, were you lying to Detective Antinor or are you lying today?
I'm telling the truth today, and you have
Okay.
to listen.
Okay. I just needed to know when we should believe you and when we shouldn't.
Sustained. Jury disregard that.
I have no further questions.
Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. What happened with the squeezing of the ribs?
I was in the kitchen making food for my son, and I heard a weird like groaning noise coming from my room, so I went and checked on my daughter. And Jacob was holding her above the crib, squeezing her.
So what part of that was false that you told Detective Antoine?
Apparently, I thought that she meant, like looking at that warrant, that Jacob had said he squeezed Lucy during a fight, and I tried to push him down. I said that was false because I never pushed him with my daughter.
Did you still witness him squeeze the ribs?
Yes,
It was just in a different manner,
yes,
and it was written up differently in his report,
yes,
and that's why you disagreed with it.
yes.
Did you ever go to A.J. Conley's house?
No.
What happened that night that you recall?
My mom drove her old car up to my house, and I just stayed the night there. I never went to his house.
Were you supposed to go to his house?
No, we had talked about hanging out the next day when I got my kids because he wanted to meet them.
Exhibit 108. You're asked about Exhibit 108,
Yes,
and I believe you said that you could clarify that.
yes.
Can you clarify that now?
I never call him Jake, but he was on my account that day. I remember it. And I'm guessing he sent that because I never said his name
Objection,
is
calls for
Jake.
speculation.
Well, I'm going to sustain it. Guessing is not proof, so the jury will disregard that.
There's some testimony about your work. Is that correct? About your work schedule.
Yeah,
And some discrepancy on when you started work. Do you remember?
I can't remember exact dates.
I believe the state had asked you if you started work on July 27th, 2020.
I think I started a little bit before that.
Okay, when did you start? Do you know?
Around July 23rd, because that's the day he was over there.
What do you mean that you applied twice when you said that?
When I applied for it and I got the job, they said I had to go reapply because there was some information missing.
Were you working until you reapplied?
Yeah.
And March 114, you already reviewed that? Is that correct?
Yes.
You asked questions about that document?
Yes.
And I believe the questions in referral to bug bites.
Yes.
Do you have an explanation for those bug bites?
I was over at my friend's house that Jacob's sister always went to. And yeah,
Did the children get bug bites then?
yeah.
When was that?
Around this time, I can't remember.
There's some comments about and some messages about you not wanting the children. Do you have an explanation for this?
That day I was getting my van, I believe, and Jacob had my account around that time.
I'm sorry, I'm going to object. What's the date?
I don't know, so I'll sustain it. You need to get the time clarified. The jury will disregard that.
I would make a note of it.
And it's been marked as Exhibit 116. You recognize that?
Yes.
Did you testify to that earlier?
Yes.
Okay. Did you write those comments in there?
No.
How would you know that you didn't write those?
Because that day, my son wasn't feeling good and I was taking care of him.
Can't hear you.
Sorry. That day, I was taking care of my son and I wasn't on my phone much because he wasn't feeling good.
And what is the contents of that exhibit?
Talks about leaving my kids home alone.
Did you ever write in a Facebook post that you did not want your children?
In a Facebook post?
In a Facebook message, sir.
No.
In regards to the letter, the agreement that you wrote, or the agreement that was written up, do you still maintain that that was not what was agreed to?
That's not what I agreed to.
You still maintain that you did not sign that agreement?
Yes.
There was reference to coming over to sign paperwork. What was that about?
Oh, he was supposed to come over because he said he had a relative that was a notary. And when he came over, we had discussed before then on the phone that he was only supposed to take temporary custody of Lucy.
There's also reference to you dropping a temporary protection order.
Yeah.
Did you drop that temporary protection order against yourself?
Not against myself, but against the kids.
There's also reference that if you were so terrified of him, why would you drop that TPO?
I only dropped it so that he could see the kids.
Were you terrified of him?
Yeah.
What made you terrified of him?
Objection.
Sustain.
Was this the first TPO issued
Second.
against Jacob?
It was the second.
Objection. Outside of the.
That is outside the scope of the cross, so I'll sustain that.
Why did you say the other individuals harmed the children?
Sorry, what was that?
Why did you list other people's names for harming the children?
Because around the time that those incidents happened, Jacob was there prior, and then I would take him to those certain people's houses, and then I would see them.
I don't understand.
I would question them, like I would see the marks on my kids after I picked them up from that person's house. And before then, I even took them to that house. Jacob had been at my house.
Going back to your work, were there occasions where you took off an hour early?
Sometimes because I feared that there was something going on at home.
Objection.
I'll sustain that goes beyond. I'll disregard the part about why she did it. Just she did take off early. You can consider that, nothing else.
How often did you take off early?
About 5 times, I think.
Over the course of how long?
The entire time that I worked there.
The prosecutor referenced that you had 107 or 105 degree temperature on September 7th. Do you remember her saying that?
Yes.
Do you also remember saying in direct testimony that it
Objection leading.
True. Sustained.
Did you have a temperature of 105 on September 7th?
Yes.
Did you have a temperature of 105 on September 9th?
Yes.
How long did you have a temperature?
The entire time I was sick.
Was it always that hot?
It would fluctuate. It would drop a little below a fever, and then it would go right back up the next day.
Did you ever have discussions about putting your kids up for adoption?
No.
Did you ever reach out to anybody about taking these children other than Jacob?
Not that I recall.
There's also reference to you leaving children unattended at night. Remember that?
I never left my kids unattended.
No further questions, sir.
You may step down. Next witness.
No further witnesses. With the defense moving, our exhibit will rest.
All right. Counsel approach, please. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I did tell you yesterday that the only thing that's predictable about trials is that they're unpredictable, and so my prediction was off the mark. It's now 20 to 4, and we have to do a couple more legal matters, and then I need to give you instructions, and then have closing arguments, and then some additional instructions. So I wouldn't be able to get this case to you probably till 5:30 today, and so I don't think that that's fair to you or to anyone else. I'm sure everybody wanted to get done today, including everyone that's participating, but it's just not going to happen. So we're going to resume tomorrow at 8:30, and based on that schedule, it's going to be probably, there's not going to be any more evidence. The evidence is closed. The defense rested, and the state is not calling any rebuttal, and I made rulings on exhibits. So the evidence will be over. So in the morning you'll hear the jury instructions, opening instructions, then closing arguments, some closing instructions on deliberations. So I anticipate that would take about 2 hours, so that you should have the case about 10:30. So I think I'm pretty safe on that. I think this one will turn out because I have control over that. So so please come back in the morning. Now, as I said, you will not be able to have your cell phones. We do have bags available, individual bags for everybody. If you want to bring them in the courtroom, or if you want to leave them at home, or whatever, however you want to do it, that's up to you. But you won't be able to have them with you during the deliberations. So during the evening recess, remember the instructions. Do not discuss this matter with anyone, including among yourselves. Don't permit anyone to discuss it in your presence or talk to you about it. Don't read anything about it, whether it be in the newspaper or in social media or anything else. Don't if somebody texts you or something or whatever, don't read it. Do not make any postings or comments in any social media about the case or your service at this point. That can wait until after the case is completed if you are so inclined. Do not attempt to obtain any information about the matter. Look up anything on the internet or any other research into anything that you've heard discussed or any testimony that you've heard today or during the trial. Again, don't attempt to. We're making these recordings private. So if you ever want to go back and watch them after the trial is complete, then we can unprivate them. However that works, I don't know. I'm not in charge of that. But do not try to, and just in case we don't get that done, do not look at any YouTube recording. All right, the attorneys and parties will need to stay so we can conduct some additional legal discussions after the jury leaves. So we'll see you tomorrow morning, and we want to start at 8:30, so try to be here maybe about 25 after. Thank you.
Motion that I previously made at the end of the state's evidence. I will incorporate those arguments and add to the addition of that based on the testimony that was provided after the state's close of evidence, most notably Brittany Haynes, that there was no new information that anybody had seen her physically abuse these children. To the opposite, she actually points out another individual who physically abused these children. There was no additional information provided that would bolster the state's case. So we feel that with the new information of the denial by the defendant and the pointing out to Jacob Perkins as the person causing these injuries, that our motion for Rule 29 should be granted. Thank you.
Collins.
Your Honor, again, I would argue that you don't need an eyewitness to prove a crime, so I'm not sure why someone needs to see her abuse these children. Secondly, whether or not Jacob caused these injuries is a decision for the jury to make. I definitely think that differing minds could come to different conclusions after the defendant's testimony, and that therefore it's a question for the jury.
Mr. Despotorge.
Nothing additional, Your Honor.
All right. Well, the court finds this a matter of credibility, particularly as to the issues between the defendant's story and testimony of the other witnesses. And also, again, there's no requirement that there be an eyewitness to the crime. That circumstantial evidence can be a basis for finding of guilt if the jury is satisfied that they constitute proof beyond reasonable doubt. Now, we'll go ahead and address the jury instructions now. I did find a couple of mistakes on page 11 on the cause, on the lesser included offense. I had serious physical harm on page 11. I deleted that. And also, when I cut and paste, I had a name of a victim from a previous case, so I changed that on to LH on both lines and deleted serious in both lines. So far, that's the only thing I have caught. Have either of you have any corrections that you've noticed?
Judge, did you fix their verdict forms?
Fix them in what way?
Well, I only got count 1 and count 3.
Oh, yeah, I have counts 1 and 3. Yeah.
What about count 2?
Yeah, I have count 2. Yeah.
Okay, and the initial...
It's the same as count 3 except different section number. 2919.22B1.
Different initials of the child was the other issue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
LH is in count 2 and WH is in count 3.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I did initially have, I think, LH in count 3. I did fix that. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You have anything else?
I do not, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Despotorge?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
All right. So the only lesser included, I did include the lesser included on count 1 of assault. So that will be the only thing. There's no request for any other. I didn't see any others possible. That one's I don't really think very likely, but since there's a finding that needs to be made on counts 2 and 3, I think it's the safest thing is to submit it to the jury should they make that decision on those 2 counts. So. All right. As we talked about earlier, I think that the instructions will take me no more than 30 minutes or so to read the first opening. I'll give the opening as part, break, and argument. And as I said earlier, I think 45 minutes apiece should be sufficient. And then I will probably take a recess after that for the jury, then give them the deliberation instructions, which shouldn't take more than 20 minutes or so. And then what we do is with the alternate, we do keep the alternate under the instructions, and we allow the alternates to leave, but they have to be able to get back here within 20 minutes if we need to replace somebody in the jury. So, because I've had that happen twice, and since I've been judge, and we did lose an alternate today, which thankfully we had 2. So, all right. Anything further from counsel?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
All right. We'll see you then in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The ones that weren't admitted, put those in a separate folder and mark not admitted.